Hello there, Sarah from 17 once again. This is my Rise of the Tomb Raider Survivor difficulty video walkthrough. This is Soviet Installation Part 2, and we're talking to one of the remnants here to get a mission to break some of these radio communications. There it is, communications breakdown, you get the lockpick, and the reason I'm doing this is I was a little bit concerned that if I skipped it I wouldn't have the amount of resources to craft, because I used a lot of crafting on my first playthrough and I didn't want to shoot myself in the foot. Looking back, having beat the full game again with less equipment, worse guns, you know, not as strong Lara, I can pretty comfortably say you do not have to get this lockpick. It's going to help, but it's not going to help enough that it makes the massive difference I thought it could. I just wanted to be safe rather than sorry, and I don't think it hurts the guy too much. Although, isn't it weird how she picks and chooses what she will grab and what she won't grab? And it's all down to detection. The jumping in this game has weird detection at times. For the most, it'll work just as it should, but the times when it doesn't are truly head-scratching moments, and there's some fantastic ones you're going to have in your own experience with the game, because it's just weird. There are times where Lara does things that defy what you think she can do. And it's never in a good way. You never do some kind of crazy weird jump and it saves you, or you do some kind of crazy weird jump and it skips a part of a level. It's always the crazy weird jump that gets you killed. And I think they toned down the Lara dying porn that was in the last game. There's still some of it in there, but it's nowhere near as, you know, here's a knife through her eye, you know, here's one up her nose. Like, it's not as always over the top, we're gonna kill her and have great lingering camera angles of her death. But she can still die pretty damn fiercely, so be very careful. Like, you see that? Why would she not kick up there? Admittedly, I was on the edge of the surface that's the kick-up surface, but feasibly, it's just a surface. Can't she kick off any surface? No, she can't. And it's that really binary way the game works. There is a detection zone that lets you do something, and there's a detection zone that doesn't do it. And if you hit any of those spots where it's not turned on, you're fucked. And there are times where it's literally the same place. Certain ice surfaces where if you hit it on the close to the edge but not on the edge, she just doesn't stick them in. The best one is, because the animations are so direct, like, she has to pull her arms back and swing them forward to embed the ice picks. If you don't let her do that, or something interferes with that animation, she doesn't do it. And you'll just die. And there's so many moments where you're like, Laura, what are you doing? You're getting me killed. A lot. You truly are, woman. And then the moments where it doesn't do that, you're like, this feels good, this feels fine. And I always bring it back to the same thing personally. Whenever I'm playing a game that has platforming elements and the platforming's bugging me, I always think back to Lords of Shadow, the Castlevania game that was made by Mercury Stream, I can't remember the name. The platforming in that game, combined with the artistic camera that often did more hindering than it did to be helpful, was one of the worst experiences I've had in modern platforming. It really, really pissed me off almost universally the entire time I did it. It never felt good, it never felt responsive, it never felt satisfying, it always felt bad to me. And I always say the same thing when I'm having an experience where I'm having like flashbacks of shit not working, or not working the way it seems like it should have, and then, you know, your character dies because of it, is I always think it's not as bad as that initial experience I had with Castlevania. And I'm not even talking about like the music box where everybody complains that that place is a nightmare, which it is, but I just mean the standard stuff where, you know, he didn't jump right, or he missed a platform he should have grabbed, just the simple shit. A little bit like Uncharted at times, where you jump towards it, it looks like he's going to grab it and he doesn't. And then you do the exact same framed jump and he grabs it that time. Just those weird inconsistencies that video games sometimes have. But what I'm going to be doing here, guys, is while we break these items, I'm going to be going through this area, picking up some stuff, getting some resources, some loot, and probably killing some wolves, because the wolves generally give you 1 to 3 pelts, which is really useful for upgrading your pouches and your gear and stuff. So you want to definitely try and stay on top of that. Additionally, a good idea here is to get like a mental image of this entire area. And I say this for a good reason. Rise of the Tomb Raider has features that are very reminiscent of your Metroidvania games or your Zelda games, where as you get better gear and new items to traverse the world, you can come back to the older spots and the older zones, and there will be areas that you can now adventure into to get optional stuff. It's not always going to be gold, it's not always going to be, you know, amazing items and new weapons and things, but it's enough so that you can get some decent stuff if you look. This place in particular has a couple of like walls that need grenades to be blown open or explosives. It has some areas where you have to use the rope launcher arrow and stuff. So if you come back once you've got that, you can start adding to certain features. Additionally, there's a challenge for cutting down flags. You can only do that once you have the knife. You get the knife in the mine, which is a little distance from where we are now. So it's a good idea to go back to old areas and see if you can open up new ways. That being said, there is no moment in this game where you need to do that. You know, in some of those old Castlevania games, the only way to progress was to go back to an old area, use a new item, and go a different path, and it led to a different area, like a different world, a new zone. This game doesn't do that, which I'm very grateful for. Because I used to be a very big Castlevania fan, but you know what I was never a fan of? When you're going back through all the old areas trying to find like a hidden wall you needed to find, or trying to find a jump that you couldn't previously make that you now need to, and just scouring your map for areas that look like you might be able to go further there. I used to fucking hate that. And you might say, well, Chris, why didn't you just Google it? Well, I'm talking about the time where I didn't have the internet. You know, not many people did. We had the internet at school, and it was on 2 computers in the library that you had to book to spend like 25 minutes on. You know, it was rough, dude. You don't even realize how good this generation of gamers has it. Like, just our entire society as a whole. Now the internet's come along and simplified everything. Everybody's a fucking, you know, pocket scientist, pocket critic, pocket expert on any given subject, as they quote verbatim what Wikipedia says. And as much as it does give folk delusions of grandeur, it's amazingly useful. Like, I can remember in art class going on the computer that they had there in like the second to last year of my secondary school, and I remember saving game facts onto a floppy disk so that I could bring them home and read them on my computer, because I didn't have the time to read them there and we weren't allowed on the internet. Like, just imagine doing that. You know, and I'm sure that people have got even crazier stories than that, of just the stupid shit you had to do back in the day, but you can't fathom having to do shit like that. And it was, hilariously, I've still got some of these because I found them on an old computer, and one of them was, I think, a character guide for Super Smash Bros. Melee, just to age this a bit, when Melee first came out too. And it was people giving you tips on, you know, the best way to use certain characters. And at the time, I thought myself pretty decent at Smash Bros. Melee. In the grand scheme of things, I was probably average at best, but I was, you know, the best person in my area of the people that I could play with, as I've mentioned previously. And when I was reading them, I always used to be like, well, that's not right, that's not right. Like, they'd recommend you using weird shit on some of these facts, and at the time, I didn't really realise, or I didn't quite grasp, you know, the full understanding that these people were just people who had writ these facts and submitted them to the site. I thought they were, you know, informed, and I thought everybody on there was informed, and of course, if you've ever been on GameFAQs, you know this is not the case, but I didn't realise, you know, at the time. So I got some of these, and some of them were good. Some of them were people who knew what they were doing. Like, I had one for, I think, Zone of the Enders 2, and the guy knew what he was doing. He gave me some cool tips. I had one for Devil May Cry 3. That one was fucking terrible. By the way, there's a crossfade here because I went on a massive tirade running around this area without realising where the last one was. Turns out it's on this middle rock all the way up here, and you have to do some climbing. And yes, I did get attacked by a wolf, which is why my screen's all messed up. But that Devil May Cry 3 one was horrible. He was telling you to just like jump and Helmbreaker on bosses. That's all he was telling you to do, and just make sure you've got at least 10 vital stars, and you're just like, oh my god, dude, really? The fuck is this about? Terrible strategies. But, you know, he thought they were good, and he thought they would help, so why not? But the ability to just look up a fact and know where you were going. I remember sending... How did I contact her? I must have been just through school, I think. I think it was through school, Jesus Christ. Like, going into tech, into information technology, and talking to a buddy of mine, and asking him to look on the internet when he got home, because he had the internet at home, to tell me what I was doing wrong on a game called Alundra, which is kind of like an adult Zelda. And it's one of those games where finding where you need to go is really hard. And I was not very good at games back then, so it was even tougher because I just kept getting lost. I'd do a dungeon, and I'd be like, where the fuck do I go? Where's the next dungeon? And I'd look across all the map and everything, and I just didn't have a clue. So go to school, see my buddy, dude, I can't get past this. Look for this dungeon, and then see what he has to do afterwards. And he would print me A4 pages from the facts, bring them into school, and be like, oh, that's what you have to do. I used to feel like a wanker too. I used to feel like a dick, asking him to do it for me, but I just didn't have a clue. And back then, there was nobody that could help you. You had to find it. And it was hard. It was really hard. So when the internet came, it was this godsend, especially for stuff like Castlevania. The suffering I went through on those Game Boy Advance Castlevanias, Jesus Christ. Brutal times. And that's why today's standards, when I'm playing these games, you'll notice I don't generally get... Well, I mean, you don't really see too much of it, but I don't get bothered when I can't find where to go, because I know it'll probably be quite obvious and quite simple. I'm just not seeing it right. Because games now are so much more linear. They're so much more accessible. It's almost a bad thing of just how dumbed down they are in that regard. But then when I think back to those old experiences, as much as I like a game to challenge me and I like to earn it, I would never wish those experiences on people. I would never want you to feel like I felt when I was playing Alundra for the first time when I was like fucking 12 or something, because it was so much frustration, and I loved the game. I think it's a fantastic game. I want to replay that game, actually. I know they've got it on the PSN, but I think it's a bit expensive. I own the fucking disc, son. I've got the PlayStation 1 Classic in my cupboard. It's just got a damaged instruction booklet because when my nephew was 2, my mum just let him loose and he tore it. And she did her best job to sellotape it back together, and I was so pissed. Oh, I was a bad person then, folks. I valued my gaming paraphernalia more than I did my flesh and blood, which is very stupid when you think about it, but I would have probably thrown that child out of a window if she'd have let me. I was that mad. And now couldn't give a shit. What is it? It's paper at the end of the day. But it's surprising the things that are important to you. As we finish up the mission and we can progress onwards now. So the thing that I like the most about this game, and it's something that's creeping into most games, is a waypoint. A universal, constant waypoint. And the great thing about it? You can't see it now, can you? You have to seek it out if you want to know where to go. So it enables the people who don't want to be shown where to go to figure things out, but the people who don't want to do that can click a button and they can be pointed in the right direction. And I think that's a wonderful implementation of innovation. It's truly a great addition to gaming because it satisfies everyone. There's not somebody who's in the middle there being like, well, it doesn't really affect me, because it does. And that is great, and this game uses it really well. It would be nice if you turned it on and turned it off like you do in the Arkham games, because then it would be a little bit less strenuous on pushing in your right analog. A fun fact so far, you might notice I've not been changing weapons too much. I'm playing on my original white Xbox One controller where my D-pad is dead, it's knackered. And if you've watched any of my Fallout 4 blind playthrough that's happening right now on the channel, you'll hear me bitching at Fallout, like, why doesn't it change my weapons, this game is shit. It is not the game. The game is 100% innocent. I revoke every statement that I said against the poor game. 100% my controller. And it is so bad. It's so frustrating. And the first firefight that's tricky, I swap. You don't see it because I edit it out, but you're going to tell when I'm using the new controller because I'm way more eager to change weapons. And of course at the moment I don't really have weapons, so there's not going to be too much of that, but just the feeling of being able to swap quickly and pressing a button and having it work, you underestimate it so much. It's so satisfying. And I beat this entire game on Survivor, my first time with a knackered D-pad, because I'm too lazy to reach 5 yards in front of me, open a cupboard door, get out my new pad that I bought that I'm kind of like saving on a pillow and plug that in. But I ended up doing that for the rest of this guide because I couldn't do it. And the things you notice too, it's quite profound. Like the kind of serrated, gritty analogs with the grip that they've got on them when they're new. Like, how many of you still have that shit on your controller? Because I'm guessing not many. Because that shit goes so quickly when you use them. Just the feel of the analogs and the feel of the controller. This new black one is way different than the white one I've got. It's slimmer. You can feel a difference in it. The analogs are like closer, and some of the buttons feel a bit better. And I think they've worked on the bumpers a bit. I think it's like a Generation 2 controller. Definitely feels a little different. And I didn't even realise until I plugged it in the other day. Just like, wow, this actually feels kind of different. Am I like stroking out here or just imagining this? But it's true. Subtle differences. You know, it's like when you go from the PlayStation 4 controller to the PS3. I thought they were just kind of similar. You know, just one has, you know, better feeling analogs and like a bit longer handles and more grip on them, and then the triggers have been made a little better. I thought that was just the case, but when you do it, it's so different. But your brain's just, you know, it's similar, you know, it's pretty much the same, and it really isn't. But if you're wondering what I did then, guys, as I was moving up here, 2 of those people saw me, so they had those yellow triangles. So I went around the side, killed the guy up there, and then I came from the other side. And it worked really well. And this is the last dude left, this guy here. And he is one of those people who runs at you and attacks you with a knife, but he also has a pistol so he can shoot you as he does it. Which, he's an interesting enemy type. There's only about 3 enemy types in this game. There's the guy who rushes you with the pistol and like tries to stab you. There's the standard dude that does everything, and then there's the armored dudes. One of them has a shield, one of them has a flamethrower, and then the other ones generally have like assault rifles or shotguns. There's not enough enemy types, straight up, you know. They don't have enough enemies that cover enough different areas of challenge to come together and complement each other and make encounters hard. And that's one of the greatest failings of the game. They just haven't been able to take this really fun combat system and this really capable Lara and offset her with something that brings out the need of those abilities. You're going to find throughout this game that you have so many options to dispatch people that you don't have to even use them. So many resources to throw Molotovs or make improvised explosives or shoot barrels or drop ceilings or pull down, you know, like levers and stuff. So many environmental aids, and then you have all these great abilities and tools, and it just gets to the point where it's almost the other way. You feel like Jigsaw and you've got people caught in your trap because everything is against them and you're so empowered. But once again, that is the end of the video, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and you take care now.